What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, checking out the Grim EDC Scythe pouch version 2, and these are going to run you $50 to $55 or so depending on the pattern and materials. This specific version is a collaboration with Stacks, which was very limited, only 23 of them, so I'm not going to focus so much on the materials and that sort of stuff because this one has that quarter binder and whatever the material is printed on with the polyurethane coating, but there's like a ripstop nylon version. They may do other materials in the future or even in the past that I'm not aware of. And so really just kind of look at the one you're picking up for materials, but the dimensions and layout should be exactly the same. And so if you're seeing this and you saw my first video on the Scythe version 1, you may be wondering if it's just a different pattern on the exact same pouch, and they do look like that. So here's the version 1 unloaded, and you can see the front's exactly the same, different colors and patterns, but otherwise same layout, same thing on the back. And so it does look that way, but the interiors are very different. And so once I get this unloaded, I'll compare the two side by side so you can kind of see the differences and which one you prefer. But they do make a variety of colors and they tend to cycle out. They will sell out, not depending on collaboration stuff, sells out pretty fast, but if it's just a different colorway, those don't sell out so fast. They'll usually last a week or two, and he's constantly adding new ones and cycling them out. Some of them last even longer than that. And so it's not one of those pouches where you really have to chase it for the most part. Now, the dimensions on this are 4.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall, and that's going to be true obviously on both the Scythe 1 and 2 since they're the same on the exterior. The Velcro on the front is 3 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. So far, I don't think he's ever done a version that doesn't have Velcro, which I don't mind because I like putting REs. I'll usually, if there's a Velcro, non-Velcro version, choose the Velcro version, but I know not everyone's into it, and so wouldn't mind seeing a non-Velcro version in the future, but this one has a ton of Velcro, so we'll show all of that. Now on the back, you get a little bit more Velcro. This one's pretty small. It's about 1.25 inches tall by 4.5 inches wide, but you can see it's curved, so the top is even more narrow than the bottom, so not even quite that 4.5 inches, and it ends right at the lining of this back pocket. I know I mentioned I wasn't going to mention the material and pattern so much, although on this one I do wish it was centered. So I don't know if it was a limited material, but it seemed intentional. All of them are like that, but I do wish the pattern was a little more centered, and that's really not going to matter on other pouches in general because a lot of the fabrics aren't repeating, and so it doesn't actually matter what the cut looks like. Just a kind of small aside there. This does have this back pocket, which is 3.75 inches tall by about 4.5 inches wide with full width of the pouch. It does get pretty tight when you have it fully loaded out. And so you're gonna be able to put credit cards, cash, receipts, paper, that sort of thing. But if you have anything too thick, you might have a hard time getting it out. And so just something to keep in mind. I have a small notebook back there. This is just one of those right in the rain ones. You can buy a 10-pack of them for pretty cheap and have them in a few different colors as well. And so this is just a credit card size notebook. Wanted to put something small in there, and this kind of fit the bill. It's kind of my go-to tiny notebook. It's good for quick notes, but doesn't have a lot of pages or anything like that. All of the patches that you see on here are also from Stacks, the collaboration on the pouch, but I'll link to the general page for Grim EDC with their pouches, available pouches, and same thing for Stacksology. A lot of the patches are really limited, and so not necessarily something you can pick up, but if you're interested, definitely follow along and get in on those drops. They're not super hard to get as long as you're there kind of on the day they're dropping. The zipper pull on here is YKK zipper. It just comes with a paracord zipper pull. This is actually the same paracord. I did add the bead. That doesn't come included. And this is from Workerman. It's the ghost bead in the gum sole material, which just seemed appropriate since Stacks is so kind of shoe oriented and really for sneakerheads for the most part. They do some other stuff as well, but a lot of shoe stuff. And so has that ghost on the front and this little globe or planet on the back. Really cool little bead that just dropped as well, and I'll link to their general website. And anything you see in here, I'll try and put either general links or specific to the product if I can find them. And most of the stuff inside I should be able to. So that's it on the outside. Let's dive onto the inside. And so really interesting layout on here, a little bit different than obviously what we saw in version 1 and even in some other pouches. You do have a little bit more patch real estate. And so that is going to be about 3 1/4 inches tall by 2 1/4 inches wide. The pocket behind it's a little bit taller, but same width obviously, so 3 1/2 inches or so. You do lose some of that Velcro to the Cordura binding here. But I'll start out on the left hand side. For the patch thing, the only thing I do want to mention is that if you're using something with a pocket clip, it is taking up some of that patch real estate, so you can't put like a full 3x2 patch here if the pocket clip is centered. This one's pretty off to the right, so I probably could move it over a little bit more to get a little more patch real estate, but that is going to eat into it, and most pocket clips aren't going to, you're not going to want to bend them so much that you get on top of this, and which is a pretty thick patch. So we'll start on the left side with what's inside. The back pocket is full width, and it's about 4 inches by 4 inches, so have a lot of space in there that you can fit small flat items or even a little bit bigger items. If you wanted to put a multi-tool, this might be the side that you'd go with because it's a little bit wider. So I do have a hank in there. This one's from Patch Platoon. Really like this one for a couple of reasons. One is just the unique shape of it. I think it's really cool. But two, I thought it matched that pattern. You have that cement pattern or elephant skin pattern that you see on a lot of Jordans. And this one kind of has a similar look to it, just in a blood red colorway. So it's kind of that similar cracked pattern on it. So thought that was appropriate for this one. Now, in front of that, this is where I think it gets a little bit interesting in the design. You have a 3-inch tall by 4-inch wide zipper pocket, and really like this is just kind of what you want. You just dump it in there. It is netted, so stuff can get caught on that a little bit, but you can just dump small items in here if you want USBs and SD cards and that sort of thing, or you can put one bigger item, whatever you want. It does add a little bit of versatility to the pouch. And so first item in there is the notorious EDC beer bomb. This is a Big Papa version, which is just a little bit thicker. But this is mostly just pocket art. It does serve some function. You see there's a little bit of pry capabilities, although it's such a steep angle that it's not going to replace a regular pry bar. It does have light pry capabilities. You do have a bit driver option there in the eye that will fit a standard 1/4 inch bit, a bottle opener here on the front, and a little bit of a flathead turner here right in front of the mouth. And so this is gonna work on some items, not on others. It's pretty thick and has a little bit of a weird access, but things like spinning a base plate, for example, on a camera will work, but it's not gonna work on a lot of screws. It's really meant to be pocket art, just with a little bit of function on it as well. And so right next to that, I have some more pocket art. This one's fidgety as well. This is from Loadout EDC, their collaboration with Urban EDC Supply Company. This is the stainless with the copper. There was also a zirconium one, much more expensive, but just a fun fidget, just slides back and forth, makes a little bit of noise, but you can do it a little bit more silently too if you press down. And just a fun thing to fidget with. It has a click option as well if you want to annoy everyone in the room, but also pretty satisfying. So you can just click that. And so fun thing to carry around with you. Doesn't serve any purpose unless you just need something to distract you and fidget with. It is fun. Fidgets either way. You can see that magnet track in the back. So fun to play with. And so that's everything I have on the left side. If we move on over to the right side, we'll start in the front. We have this pen. I don't know who makes it. It's not branded at all. I'll see if I can track it down. I got it. It actually might be Tech Accessories. It says Tech on the bottom. So I got it off Amazon a while back, but it's just a keychain pen that you can add to your keychain and write with. It's pretty small, so pretty minimal in terms of what I'd be writing with this particular loadout, just because I have such a small pen and notebook. But if you do need to write something down, your phone's dead, or you just want to jot down phone number, email address, whatever, reminders, grocery list, anything like that, it will work, but it's a pretty small pen. It's not the most comfortable to write with, but better than nothing. Now, right behind that, I have the Civivi Baby Banter. This is the green micarta version of it. Small knife, could have fit a bigger one in here. This is the one I chose to go with, but could have fit a bigger one in here. As far as these pockets go, they're about 1.5 inches wide. The front one's about 2 3/4 inches tall. The back 3.5 inches tall. And they're not super usable if you have something thick in the back. And so like this in the back took up pretty much all of the space. So even putting this pen in there was a little bit of tight fit with that in the back. So you're not necessarily going to be using both of those depending on how thick the item that you put in there. I guess in theory, if you put a thinner item in there, you might be able to fit something in the front, but I had a hard time putting a larger item in the back and then putting anything at all in the front. This was really the only way to incorporate both pockets for me, is putting something really thin and out of the way over here. Now, back pocket, I already gave the dimensions this one earlier. Last item I have in here, this is the Comm PryX pry bar. It's about 1 inch wide by 4 inches tall. Has that pocket clip on there that works well. Again, if I didn't use the pocket clip, it gives me a little bit more patch real estate, but that kind of sinks in there and makes it a little bit less easy to access. It still works, but I prefer to use it with the pocket clip in there. Now, let's look at the just kind of side by side of these, because they are pretty different. So version 1, let's open it up and we'll do side by side comparisons of the left and then switch over to the right. So left side, you have similar back pocket. They're gonna be the same dimensions and full depth, full width. And so that's exactly the same. The front's where it gets really different. This one has some organization here that has a little bit less height than the zipper pocket and is also divided in half. Is also a kind of more firm material, so it's not going to expand as much as this netted material. So I really like the version 2 option a little bit better, just because it gives you a little more versatility. You can put a bunch of small items in here. Like in these ones, you don't have that great of access into it with your hand because it's divided, and it also doesn't close off. So it can put small items, but I'd prefer to put small items in this one. This one is more geared towards like random individual EDC items, and that works well, but you have some of that on the opposite side. As far as version 1, version 2, the left side, I definitely prefer the version 2. Now, the opposite on the right side is very different, and so this one has another full width panel back here, and this one is divided about 1.5 inches by 2.25, I believe, wide. So you have more kind of versatility here. I like the divider a little bit, but I do wish it was more down the middle. So maybe about 2 inches and 2 inches or so. Not the end of the world, but I don't mind the divider, and it's really necessary because of the rest of the right side. So this one doesn't have any other pockets, but it has these elastic bands, and I like that a lot. Obviously they stretch out a little bit, but it gives you a lot of versatility in what you can put in there. And this one, as I mentioned, you can't really use both the front and back pocket. The whole right side is eaten up by this patch real estate, which I don't really need. I like patch panels on the outside of the pouch because it's just something fun to distinguish your pouch from someone else's if you have the same pouch, which pretty small world if you both have these same Grim EDC pouches, but it's possible depending on kind of where you're at, I guess. Not as likely as like a Maxpedition or Viper Aid pouch, but still possible, I suppose. But it also just kind of makes it uniquely yours. You can decorate exactly how you want. As far as the interior patch panels go, and this isn't the only pouch that has an interior patch panel, I just don't know that I really need it. I threw some patches on here because it's there for the video. Typically when I carry this pouch, I'm just putting them on the outside. I don't really need it on the inside. No one sees it anyway, and it really is just eating up space that doesn't need to be eaten up. So I would have preferred this to be a plain, same as the rest of it, and had some elastic looping here or something like that, or another pocket instead of that patch panel. So as far as the right hand panels on these, definitely prefer version 1 over version 2. So I guess that kind of makes it a tie. It's really going to depend on your loadout. I find this version 1 a little bit more versatile, mainly because the right side. The left side of this one, I think version 2 is a little more versatile than the left side of version 1, but the right side is so much more versatile on version 1 that I still think overall this one's going to be carried a little bit more just because it's easier to adapt to my loadouts, but I like the options on that version 2. One other thing that I'll mention that I didn't mention on either of them is something I like about this, and you'll see this on some other kind of nicer pouch brands. It's not something you see usually with the cheaper brands, and so that's part of the premium. Part of the premium you're paying also is of course these different patterns, which makes them a little bit more unique. Most of the other like cheaper ones, you're just going to have a selection of 5 basic colors, usually solid colors, maybe a high vis interior or something like that, but not a lot of patterns available on the cheaper ones. And so one other thing that I think sets these apart though is that in between, obviously there's not going to be really any way to show this, but between the outer layer and the inner layer, they put another same size section of fabric that's sewn in there in between to pad them a little bit and protect the gear inside. So for the most part, you're not going to actually need that. It's pretty protected just in a regular Cordura pouch, but you do get a little bit of additional padding. So if you have something that's pretty fragile or you don't want to get banged up, these ones are going to offer a little bit more protection. I think it's going to be pretty negligible overall, but it's still a nice kind of touch and does make it feel like your gear is a little bit more secure. So I do like that about them. Overall, I think it's nice having the different options. He still sells the original version in different patterns and the version 2 in different patterns. So really, whatever works best for you is available. Collaborations typically go pretty fast. Stuff like this one is sold out, but stuff like this lasts a while and you'll have some time to buy it. If you see it, I would probably buy it sooner than later because he doesn't typically refresh them once they sell out. He'll just move on to the next pattern, but there's almost always multiple versions of the version 1 and version 2 on the site. Now there is a third pouch that he has, the Reaper. I haven't checked out yet. It's a little bit bigger, and so that'll probably be the next one I check out from Grim EDC. No kind of timeline on that. I haven't ordered one, kind of waiting for the right pattern for that, but it's definitely not going to be pocketable. And I'll say that about these as well. They're technically pocketable if you have cargo shorts or if you want to put it in your back pocket. A little bit large for me. It will fit in my back pocket, but it's not something I'm typically back pocket carrying. I'm either carrying it to the car and throwing it in my center console or putting it in a bag, not necessarily on my person. And so something to keep in mind with these as well. But the Reaper is obviously much bigger and not going to fit even in cargo pants. So let me know what you think of these down in the comments below, what you prefer between version 1 and version 2. Anything else you want to mention obviously is fine as well. But as always, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.